I'm Pete Goffe-Wood. Welcome to the latest installment of Lockdown Recipes for Disaster. I think we need to clarify something, particularly for our South African audience. Braaiing and barbecue are not the same cooking discipline. Braaiing is about grilling, which we are very, very good at, world renowned. Barbecue is about cooking low and slow and actually cooking with smoke itself, the heat from the smoke, and that's what we're going to do today. We have a glorious piece of the most beautiful brisket you have ever seen. And brisket lends itself to low and slow. We're going to get this baby on the fire, cook it for about 4.5, 5 hours. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be succulent. To get down to any smoking, let's have a look at our all-important spice rub ingredients. I've got some dark roasted coffee grounds, brown sugar, treacle sugar, the stickier the better. Here I've roasted some fennel seeds and some cumin and ground them down, dried marjoram, cumin, smoked paprika, garlic powder, and of course the all-important salt and pepper. Then we look at the hero for today, our glorious piece of brisket. This is a Wagyu brisket. It's not an entire brisket, it's only 1.5 kilos because at the moment with 2 of us in the house it's going to take a few days to get through this. But let's look at what we're looking at here with our brisket. See these lovely layers of fat here going in between. This is going to render down really, really slowly, but you can see the marbling tradition on a Wagyu, but also marbling is good on these sorts of cuts. They have lots of internal fat, and we want that to be released by long, slow, low cooking, which is exactly what the smoking is all about. And all that fat is going to melt into the meat, and we're going to have the glorious, most tasty piece of brisket that you've ever seen. Look at that along here, lovely marbling, thick layer of fat that's just going to cook down and seep into the meat. So let's get our ingredients all together for our mix. So we just pack that on. Now we're going to let that sit for an hour at room temperature, and you'll see the difference in a second. Once that's done, we're going to pack that onto the fire. But as you can see, it's been sitting for an hour, so you can see the moisture I'm talking about. Now we've got a nice little crust going on here. Our fire is now ready. Let's get that onto the fire. I put water in the smoker just to help with a little bit of steam, so the meat doesn't dry out, so there's a nice bit of moisture in here. Keep this at 120 degrees for about 4.5 hours. And we're going to put our temperature probe on. The secret is to not keep opening this to check. Have faith, provided the temperature is what it should be, that the meat's doing it. Every time you lift the lid off, you let all the heat escape and you have to build that back up again. I'm able to add more logs and wood chips as I go along in the bottom there. If it goes up too high, it means the meat's going to cook too quickly. It's going to dry out and it's going to toughen before all the layers of collagen and fat that are inside that connective tissue, before that softens and releases all its juices, they'll cook through and we'll have a dry, tough piece of meat. Brisket's now been in for 4.5 hours. I think it's time to take the temperature of the actual meat itself, see if it's ready to come off the fire. Okay, so we want an internal temperature of 69, 70 degrees, so 69.6. That's pretty much perfect. That's going to come off the fire and go onto some foil so we can let this bad boy rest. Let's take that out. There we go. Now, look at this. This is not burnt. This is what we call bark. So I'm going to wrap this up in foil. Now, we want this to stay warm, and it's quite cold today. So here's a tip. We're going to put this in a cooler box. Yeah, you heard me right, into a cooler box. It's an insulated chamber. If it can keep things cold, it can keep things quite hot. Into our cooler box. Our brisket is nearly finished resting, and before we unveil and cut into that and see how it turned out, I'm going to make a quick accompaniment to go with it. Some fried green tomatoes. I found these buttes in my garden. I've cut a nice thick slice, as you can see, and I'm just going to fry them, but first I'm going to dip them in some seasoned flour, egg wash, and some mealie meal. Most traditional recipes call for cornmeal, which is obviously polenta made from yellow corn, and seeing this is maize meal is white corn, it'll work just as well and give it a nice lekker local flavor. So, here we go. We use one hand to do this, to keep one hand clean. And then into the... Make sure they're completely covered in the egg wash, otherwise the meal won't stick. Okay, now I'll take my clean hand and put that into our hot oil. Okay. You just want a little bit of color on each side. Want to fry these so they're nice and crisp. We want them to be, they're never going to go soft and squidgy like normal tomatoes are. They're always going to retain a little bit of bite, but it's that acidity from the tomatoes they want that cuts through the richness of the barbecue. Okay, these have crisped up beautifully. Got a lovely color on them as well. They're not as yellow as you see in the pictures because obviously we've used the maize meal. And not the corn. So there'll be lovely fried tomatoes. Look at those. I'm going to put these down. Meat is sufficiently rested. Let's have a look. Okay, it's amazing how hot this still is. Oh, let's look at that. Now we want to cut with the grain, and this is, we're just going to slice into this, and let's see what happens. Oh, look at this. This lovely layer of fat. This pink, this is where the smoke has cooked it. Look at that lovely layer of fat that's gone through. This is soft and still juicy and moist. And if I push too hard, my fingers can go straight through this. This is absolutely beautiful. Oh, this is so tender, it's unbelievable. Look at that. So, our last piece on the end, because that's going to be the tastiest. As an accompaniment, we're going to serve our own barbecue sauce, which is Chef Pete's smoked chipotle. I could give you the rest of this, but I'd have to kill you. So let's pour that into. And there we have a smoked Wagyu brisket, a meal fit for a king. Well, that was a long cook, 4.5 hours. It's a long time to wait for a piece of meat. But was it worth it? Oh my word, was it worth it. That was the most beautiful piece of meat I have ever eaten. Just the smoke that had permeated the meat perfectly, the fibers had broken down, it had retained moisture. It was heavenly, it was juicy, it was tender. I cannot give you more adjectives to describe how fantastic that meat was without you actually eating it yourself. It's a beautiful way to cook. It's a beautiful barbecuing, and the use of smoke is a great way to add flavor to those secondary cuts that are not the sexiest, but man alive, when treated properly, are they the tastiest. That was unbelievably good, and I will definitely try that again. Until then, may the sauce be with you.